I-24 News Morning Edition on this December 17th, 2015, where we mark 5 years to the Arab Spring. It began 5 years ago in Tunisia, but it wouldn't have been so popular or widespread without the use of social media. Carried a young vegetable seller's message across North Africa and the Middle East, moving the people to the streets en masse. But such a fast-paced, connected world comes at a price. It has also been integral to the rise of extremist groups, namely the Islamic State that we're living and breathing its existence daily around the world in these days. Now, the Sunni extremists launch hashtag campaigns on Twitter to match their military assaults on the ground, and their propaganda knows no borders. We are going to take a look first at the following report that basically recaps how social media transformed itself from a vehicle for democracy and later on to what it can do, sadly, these days. Let's take a look at Ron Friedman's report, break it down from there.
Social media networks like Facebook and Twitter played a major role in fueling the popular uprisings of the Arab Spring. Networks formed online were crucial in organizing activists, allowing Arabs to exercise freedom of speech and enabling a space for civic engagement. Social media was also key to communicating to the rest of the world what was happening on the ground during the uprisings.
There's no question that social media played a very important role in allowing people to even get together, because in many of these countries, the mainstream media was not allowed to communicate. There were repressive media restriction provisions. So you didn't really have a free media. So people felt the anonymity and the safety of social media.
So the real story behind the Arab Spring and the way that Twitter and Facebook were used there, it's not that these tools did everything themselves, of course. It's most importantly that they let everybody else know that they weren't the only ones who thought that way. And there's strength in numbers. And once you know that there is in fact a movement out there that the government has tried to hide from you, you'll feel more comfortable going out and protesting in a square.
But the internet is a double-edged sword. In 2011, it enabled tyrannical governments to track and crack down on protesters. And today, it is the primary tool used by terror groups like ISIS to recruit and inspire attacks.
Had they checked out Tashfeen Malik a little more, maybe she wouldn't have been gotten a visa. Maybe those people in San Bernardino would be alive.
Malik vetted by Homeland Security, the State Department, and had a criminal background check. But investigators don't always scrub social media. After the attack, they found Malik's Facebook post critical of moderate Muslims. Now, the New York Times reports she also talked openly on social media in support of violent jihad and, quote, wanted to be a part of it.
Now, it's the world democracies who want to see clamps on social media.
American innovation is a powerful force, and we have to put it to work defeating ISIS.
I'm joined in studio by I-24 News correspondent Mohammed Al-Kassim. Good morning to you. With us also Dr. Michael Barak, a researcher at the Institute for Counterterrorism, IDC Herzliya. Good morning to you. And finally, Ami Kaufman, I-24 News contributor. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Barak, because I'm looking at social media. It's such an amazing vehicle. Before we look at what it transformed to in our minds, in the West's mind, in the course of the last, I would say the last year, when it comes to social media and the Arab Spring, in many ways, it already existed there before we, in the regular mainstream media, found out about it, correct?
Right. The background, yes, in the Arab states was already against the rulers because of the crisis in economy.
Right.
And the population found out that the social media networks as a tool, they found out that it's a tool to overcome the fear from the government. And
yes, and you're with me.
אתם עושים עריכה
No, we were speaking, this is live, yeah.
Okay, and so they crossed the barrier of fear.
They closed the barrier of fear. But when we're looking at social media, Muhammad, basically, when we're looking at it today, okay, we're looking at its transformation and whatnot. Let's touch back about the Arab Spring, okay? We all missed it. It comes out. Social media connects people. They try to shut down the internet, but the people are still out. Over the course of the last 5 years, what do you think happened?
Well, what happened first, and let me just give you an idea that for many, many years in the Arab world, only the news was manipulated. The flow of news, flow of information was manipulated by Arab regimes, the state TVs. So whatever the population in any of the Arab countries, almost entirely, they had to listen to was coming from the state TV. So what Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube done is to not only lift that manipulation of flow of information from the state government into the hands of the people, where they came out and they spread the times of demonstrations, where demonstrations will be held, how it's going to take place, well, not only in Tunisia but also in Egypt and elsewhere. So that gave power. It empowered the demonstrators and empowered the Arab people around the Middle East, that they can take matters into their hand. And there is a new player in the region, that is social media,
right.
And it has, it's giving them this power and this force to change things. Unfortunately, other players saw that they can take advantage of it, such as Al-Qaeda as well as ISIS, the Islamic State. They use it in two different ways. They use it as a propaganda for their own to spread their own message, but also they use it greatly and perfectly almost to recruit new members to these groups.
When we're looking at videos on the social media these days of ISIS and how it spreads, when we're looking at this mass propaganda that comes out, how much of a role does that play, Dr. Barak, when it comes to recruiting people?
Let's say if the cyber is a good arena for ISIS use it, exploit it in a huge
right.
and recruits people. Yes, it's a tool for incitement, and also there is it's used for lone wolf.
For the lone wolf. But I think that and Mohammed, you and I sit here many mornings and discuss it. When we look at the Arab world today and the Western world, and we're listening to people like Trump, Obama, Hillary Clinton, asking to shut down the internet, that it's a tool for extremism, and it's directed mostly towards the Muslim community.
I think this is shocking to hear that Western leaders, those where people listen to them and act upon what they say. First of all, it's not easy. I mean, Trump makes it easy, like calling Bill Gates and asking him to switch, turn off the switch or turn it on, and the flow of information or the internet would be working. They're acting like North Korea leaders and leaders of other authoritative regimes, where the internet is a means of power to the masses. Yes, it can be used sometimes in a very negative way, but generally speaking, the internet gives people the power to not only communicate positively and share ideas and share experiences, but also to make news where to make news available to where elsewhere it's not available.
Right.
And for ISIS looks and sees. ISIS is a very smart group. They look and see these statements given by Trump and others, and they use it to spread it on the internet for their own good. This is when
it's almost like validating what ISIS is trying to do in many ways.
Basically, they say, didn't we tell you so? What we told you before, how the West looks at
this
Muslims.
Is what the infidels are saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now they recruit people using these messages, using these statements to recruit people, to basically bring in money and also spread their ideology.
And spread their ideology.
Psychological warfare through the cyber.
And through the cyber psychological warfare, which we knew that it was going to end up with. I want us to take a look, though, because it is 5 years to this, revolutions, or the spring that has turned into winter. I want us to take a look at some headlines about the Arab Spring. And for that reason, we have invited Ami Kaufman to finally sit with us. Yes.
Well, basically, what I thought we would do in this little section here, instead of the regular press review, is take a look at what's going on in the main Arab newspapers that are online and see how they're focusing on what's going on in their countries, their respective countries, on this day. Not necessarily things that are connected to the Arab Spring, but what these countries are actually focusing on.
Right.
The Al Haram newspaper has a really, really beautiful piece that opened up their homepage. It's called The Battle for Tahrir.
Right.
And I really recommend reading it, because what it talks about is, it actually opens, the opening paragraph talks about the Nile Ritz-Carlton, which people used to go to the Nile Ritz-Carlton to have views of the Nile.
Right.
But now it's really, what they're interested in, people are coming to this hotel, they want to see the views of the Tahrir Square, which is on the other side, because of Tahrir now is really so famous after the 2011 the demonstrations, the protests. But now Tahrir, the battle for Tahrir is really changing. The government wants it totally different. First of all, you cannot demonstrate anymore in Tahrir. It is heavily policed. There is a new underground parking lot there. There are no street vendors allowed. It is also very difficult to even take photographs in Tahrir Square. So the whole character of Tahrir is really changing. Right. To me, it kind of reminds me, I don't know, maybe it reminds you as well, of what Giuliani did to Times Square, cleaning up Times Square and taking out its the character of what makes.
I think Mohammed and I are laughing as former Americans, so who live there, taking out what we saw. Go ahead, you two.
The Bahraini government did the same thing in Bahrain with the Lu'lu'a or Pearl Square, right, where demonstrations used to take place there, exactly. And now they just demolished it, redone the whole square, so there won't be this symbolism for people where they can gather, and the same thing for Tahrir Square in Egypt.
And now the new government is actually putting up these new monuments that are have nothing to do with the dissent that used to happen there. And I just want to read this.
The narrative.
To change the narrative. And I want to read the way the writer ends this piece with a really poignant message. He sums it up beautifully. Tahrir is no longer a venue for dissent. That the most significant happenings in the square over the last 12 months are the inauguration of an underground car park and the reopening of the Sadat metro station, closed in August 2018 for security reasons, serves only to underline this point.
But that tells you exactly where the Arab Spring has gone.
Yes.
Yeah. Where the Arab Spring has gone specifically, in Egypt, yes.
Let's take a look at Sana, which is the official Syrian news agency website, and of course if you look at their homepage, they're all positive. It's amazing, taking how the Syrian army is winning here and winning there, and new cultural ties, new economic ties with other countries, and of course how the Russians are helping and beating ISIS and beating other. You go onto that page, you feel like you're in a totally different world of what you usually see about Syria.
And I'm wondering, I'm glad we have Mohammed here. When you look at headlines like this, which state media in Syria would pump to its people, do we feel that the dissent still within social media? We do, right? Nobody's buying this.
Of course, nobody's buying this anymore. To be quite honest with you, most state-run media outlets now are just there because the money is coming from the government. Otherwise, they won't even exist. Nobody watches them, nobody listens to them, and nobody reads what they put out.
Everybody reads between the lines.
There's no credibility to them, and people know this.
And people know that. Yes, and
Libya, of course.
Of course, please.
Libya, this is an item from the Libya Herald. You can see the Shikrit Unity government signing to take place today. It's actually interesting. This is supposed to happen today. There are two rival administrations still in Libya, one in Tripoli and one in the eastern part.
We don't report
and one in Tobruk. There are Libyan members of parliament that are meeting as we speak right now in Morocco. In a few hours, it might actually be signed to have a unity government between these two warring administrations, rival factions. Right. But the leaders of these administrations, the leaders of both of these parliaments, are saying that the people there in Morocco have no authority to do that. No legitimacy to do that. So even if an agreement is reached today in Morocco,
it's not going to be.
It might not be worth anything. It might not mean that this is far
and there's no means to how to implement these agreements. By the way,
and I think it's important to remind people that when it comes to Libya, and the West rejoiced when Gaddafi was slaughtered in the middle of the street. We can discuss whether that was right or wrong. And everybody took that. We in the Western media took to that. Okay, well, Libya is now cool.
I just want to add something to what Ali Waqid said in the first part in the show, which I was listening to him, and I completely agree with him. The West, unfortunately, and that started with the Iraq war in 2003. You cannot take something foreign, which is Western democracy, and try to enforce it and impose it on the people of the Middle East. If it's not inherently made, then they won't accept it. The body would not take an external member if it doesn't feel that it belongs to it. And that's exactly what's happening. The West cannot impose Western-style democracy in the Middle East.
It's almost like an occupying democracy in many ways, definitely. And
Tunisia Live, a very popular online website for English news in Tunisia, is opening its homepage with how Tunisia is joining the Saudi-led Islamic Anti-Terrorism Coalition, that Saudi initiative that is including 34 countries across the Arab world to fight ISIS, basically. You know, this is a country that basically, as you mentioned in your opening, that it kind of started the whole thing.
Started and supposedly is the silver lining of...
You know, still a lot of difficulties in Tunisia, of course. We should remember that. But I think, yeah, you're right. Of all the countries that went through this Arab Spring, people probably want to look at Tunisia as the best example of what could be and a sign for hope.
In many ways, and I will say again what I'm reminding, revolutions are not a Hollywood movie. It's not something that happens and then credits come up. They take time. They take years. They can take decades. And in Tunisia, it seems to be going in that direction.
In the right direction.
Yeah. We've got one more.
One more?
Yes.
Well, Iraq, which is, of course, I mean,
Sadly,
I don't even have enough words to tell what a mess Iraq is. And this is Iraqi News, an English website, opening up about their Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, who's talking about oil prices and that the decline is going to ruin their economy, but also talks about how there is future for Iraq because they are beating ISIS and they're making ground.
And I think, sadly, I'm hearing the Oscar music in my ear, but Iraq, I think, in many ways, one can say, is really a very sad example on how fragmented it is and how it's very, way past beyond saving. I want to thank you all for being with me right now. When we get back,